SimCity has always been an outlier in the world of gaming. You're not gunning down hordes of soldiers or commanding vast armies. Instead, you're building people up by designing a metropolis in which they can thrive. Sure, it has conflict, but it's the sort of fight that would happen in a board meeting and not a battlefield. These distinctions have earned SimCity a loyal following, and some of those fans have become developers in the series' latest installment, simply titled SimCity.
Hello, I'm Stone Labrandy. I'm the lead designer here at Maxis.
I'm Kip Katsarelis.
I'm Ocean Quigley. I'm the creative director on the new SimCity.
And so I first started playing SimCity on the black and white Macintosh back when it was just one little 512K or whatever it was back then, and just kind of fell in love with the game.
When I was a kid, I'd build little model houses and little model airplanes, and we lived out in the countryside for a while, so I'd build these little villages on the mud bank of the stream and stuff like that.
So the SimCity game, I found it on my stepmother's Mac, and I was just kind of checking. She worked at Apple at the time, so there was this game SimCity on there, and whoa, what's this?
I've always loved games that had kind of this deeper simulation element to them.
And I played for a few hours after school and was just kind of hooked.
While these designers grew up with these series' classic entries, the pressure to bring the next SimCity to console or mobile hardware must have been a concern. Was there ever a discussion about not making this a PC game?
What is SimCity? Who's the type of player who plays games like SimCity, and how can we reach them? Where would they expect this game to live? And we want it on a PC platform. We want it to be very deep. We want it to be really engaging. And we want it to be really rich and 3D and immersive. So the PC is really the only platform that right now can handle all of that.
Well, I think it was time for something new. It's been 10 years since SimCity 4, so it was definitely there was an idea of what the SimCity was going to be, this detailed simulation come to life, on your computer, and it was meant to be on a PC. PCs are now powerful enough to really kind of do what we wanted to get out of this game.
It's a game that I had wanted to make for a long time, and I was able to get EA to pay for it. So if you as a creative artist get a patron who's willing to put a bunch of money behind something you want to do, you take it. This SimCity is the expression of a lot of desires that I've had about SimCity, since I was a kid, really. Since SimCity Classic and SimCity 2000. A bunch of them were things, like I said, that we wanted to do in SimCity 4 and that were just out of the question. The computers weren't powerful enough at the time. We didn't have the infrastructure to do it at the time. And we realized that once we could, once the tools were there to do it, once people had machines that could actually run the simulator, well, hell yeah, of course we're going to do it. We're going to do it as much as we can.
Right from the start, we really said, this is for the PC gamer audience. This is a game that has traditionally always been on PCs, and this is where it belongs.
This game, just trying to figure out the controls on a console, have fun with that one.
It was more like, why wouldn't I want to bring it back?
So, SimCity is back and aims to capitalize on its traditional PC gaming roots. But where do you start developing a game this open-ended, and how does that process differ from, say, developing a first-person shooter?
As a designer, I feel very fortunate that I'm working on SimCity and not a first-person shooter game. There's a lot of games out there that I feel don't really educate in the way that SimCity does, and it's not a heavy-handed education that we do in our game. It's a very entertaining way of learning about how cities work.
You're trying to figure out how to make systems that the player is going to be able to manipulate that will be beautiful, that will make sense, that will work together and be harmonious.
We get feedback constantly from people who say, when I was young I played SimCity, and now I'm an urban planner, now I'm an architect, now I'm an engineer because of SimCity. And when you really think about the game that we're making now, how many kids are we going to touch at 12, 13 years old that are going to play this game and go off on that same trajectory? Even people who don't make their careers devoted to it still look at their cities a different way. It's very hard to play SimCity and then walk around your own city and not see it in a way that you've never seen it before. For instance, most people don't realize there's sewage flowing underneath all the streets as they walk around. You play our game, and then you go outside, and you're like, wow, look, there's electricity, there's sewage, there's water, there's all these invisible systems that keep us alive that we just take for granted. And the game helps expose some of those systems in an entertaining way, not a heavy-handed way.
SimCity is a game of parts, thousands of moving parts, and you have to build systems that snap together and that make sense.
Really, as a team in the studio in general, really wanted to get back to our roots, get back to simulation. That was going to be the core, and we'd start with a simulation engine that could do really what we wanted, which was a really detailed simulation of a city, kind of in and out, and Glassbox proved to be that engine.
So the Glassbox simulation engine, that's really what powers up SimCity, and that was designed from the ground up just to do simulation components. So it's not a graphics engine, it's a simulation engine, and it keeps track of all the resources and data that's moving through the city or the simulation, any type of simulation you want, it would still work for that.
So Glassbox came out of a bunch of unrequited desires from SimCity 4. I was the art director and creative director on SimCity 4, and the lead engineer for graphics on SimCity 4 was a guy named Andrew Wilmot, and the two of us would dream about all the cool things that we wanted to do. This is like 1999, 2000 or something like that. And so we sort of did napkin sketches of what the ultimate simulation engine might be like, but machines weren't powerful enough to pull it off. We couldn't do it at the time. So we went off to work on other projects, worked on Sims 2, worked on Spore, worked on a bunch of other things. And then when Spore shipped in 2008 or so, we got a window of time. We got 6 months, 8 months or so to actually prove all this stuff that we've been talking about for years and years and years. So Glassbox is the realization of a bunch of those fantasies left over from SimCity 4 that we weren't able to pull off. We built the simulation engine, and my boss Lucy said, "Oh yeah, that's pretty nice. What can you do with it?" And we were like, "Well, we could do SimCity with it."
From simple cows to complex cities, the technology behind SimCity has changed a lot during development. But what about the game itself? How does this near-finished product differ from its initial designs?
A small group of us, 3 or 4 of us, we worked on building out a rough kind of first prototypey version of SimCity, built around these ideas of objects and agents and a bottom-up simulation instead of a top-down simulation.
Ocean and Andrew, the lead engineer, they both wanted to, they had both worked on SimCities previously, and they both were talking about what would be the most awesome SimCity, how would that work? And their idea was that every little person had his own behavior set, and so every car, every person had a job, had money, wallets, happiness.
So one of the things that I wanted to do with this new simulation was, say, track things at a much more granular level. So instead of it just being kind of big 16-meter cells like we had in SimCity 4, I wanted to know where each person was, where what was happening inside each building. I wanted to track each car.
There are probably millions of little different variations of Sim.
They felt that that would be the most compelling SimCity game. But to make that happen, you would need an engine to power all of that, which didn't exist at the time. And so their first project was to build that engine.
And so just as a kind of a rough, crude prototypey thing to do, I just decided to make a little sim farm simulation, with like a little barn, some cows, and we didn't even have agent motion, so we couldn't even have cows that moved around. So I'd take the mouse and I'd move the cow around. Here comes the cow, and he's going to the grass, and the cow would get near the grass and eat the grass. Okay, now is the cow full? Yes, the cow's full. Let's bring him back to the barn. Up, and now the cow's being milked. And so it was kind of like a let's pretend play version.
And so it felt like how kids play with toys in their bedroom floor. It's like you have to pick up the car and move it from one location to the other.
The simulator was actually working. It was doing the things, but I had to provide all the intelligence about what was going to happen. We know that we can move the things around dynamically eventually, but just as a designer, let's try out some of these ideas mechanically, manually.
So we got that all working as kind of a proof of concept of just the simulation, and then took that, once we got that worked out, took that up to the next SimCity.
Well, it's gotten vastly more sophisticated. Like this, the first rough cut of the simulation that Andrew and I made while we were testing out Glassbox was pretty minimalist. It was just making sure that things like, that that buildings could communicate with each other by sending messages to each other, or agents could walk from spot to spot. But it was really bare bones, proving the simulation philosophy.
It's all these complex simulations on top of one another that, when pieced together, you could finally see the finished products.
One of the main features of this SimCity is, as a designer, I call it the flow concept, where things are in motion all the time in this game. So in previous versions of SimCity, it was very statistically based. You could take a screenshot of a city, you could look at it as an Excel spreadsheet, and you could just calculate the values of that city and determine just from a static picture whether that city was healthy or not healthy. With this game, everything is in motion, and it has to be in motion for the simulation to work. So if I take a screenshot of your city, I can't tell whether or not you have a crime problem. Even though you might have a lot of police stations, there might not be any way for the police to get to the crimes to arrest the criminals because your road system is all messed up. Maybe there's too much traffic, or maybe they have to go down these really long, windy roads in order to get to the criminal. And so the crime is over by the time the police car arrives. So that layout and that motion is really important. The flow of the resources through the city is key to this game, and that hasn't really existed in previous SimCities before.
The first time you could kind of build a complete city with RC&I. You had the fire, the power, the police, and it was all, we were actually playing the game, and this was a while back, and we, that was probably the first kind of like, from a gameplay perspective, big milestone for us to just see all the systems at a city level come together, and just, it was kind of sit back and was like, that's the game.
Just doing that kind of thing, populating out a world with content, is a pretty monumental task. It's not just sort of making a few little levels that you move through. It's making the raw materials that let a player create a city of their imagination.
From oil tycoons to environmentalists, prospective city planners one and all will be able to put their imaginations to the test when SimCity is released for PC and Mac on March 5th, 2013. Until then, prepare yourself by hopping on, say, Google Maps and considering the layout of your own city. You might just learn something.